أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم.
الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الكريم وبعد. Alhamdulillah. Barakallahu feekum, brothers and sisters, for coming out today. Alhamdulillah. It's so good to see you all, mashallah. I do apologize. 2 weeks ago I was supposed to come for the same lecture. Some health setbacks. But inshallah ta'ala, we say that best of all, inshallah. So we're here now. This blessed time. So what we're going to do is have a talk, inshallah ta'ala, for maybe half an hour or so. And because of our dear brother Abdur, his father who passed away, Ahmed, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him, we're going to do some recitation with Sheikh, inshallah ta'ala. And then, inshallah ta'ala, we'll close out with a dua for our brother Sheikh Ahmed. So today's topic is Muslimun fil ghabr bayna al-ihmal wal mubaligha. So it's Muslims in the West between negligence and exaggeration. This topic is near and dear to me because I believe it will save the future generations, inshallah ta'ala, from the exaggeration that leads to terrorism, as well as the negligence that leads to leaving off the tenets of deen. So, alhamdulillah, most of us here are first generation Muslims in the West, and you travel here to take some education benefit, to take some opportunity, walillahi alhamd. And this is a good thing. But when you travel here, you place the tremendous burden on your shoulders and on the shoulders of your children also, an even greater burden on the shoulders of your children. Why do we say this? Because when you travel here, you figured it out. You figured out a way to balance the traditions of your homeland along with Western culture. So you navigated easily through fiqh issues, through issues of belief. And this is because for most of you, back home, you learn from your aunties and you learn Quran from your grandmothers and grandfathers, and so you were in an insulated Islamic environment. But here's the problem. When we try to force these old methods from back home on our children, and we try to indoctrinate them into cultural practices from generations that passed away, and really the children don't know anything about that. So it becomes a problem. And this is because we're new at this, right? This is the first time this has been done. Listen close. Muslims like you, born in Muslim countries, who have come here in a non-Muslim society to raise Muslim children. This has never been done. So this is the first time it's been done. So alhamdulillah, we're learning and we're making mistakes, but alhamdulillah, your children, my children, will be the pioneers of this. Because they have to figure out, how do we balance the tradition of our parents along with being true Americans and true Muslims? And this is a difficult task. So, the basic code of ethics in Islam. There is a code of ethics in Islam. It lays it out very simple. It's our, as the Mufassirin say, it's our 10 commandments. As Ibn Mas'ud, he said in a Sahih Hadith, that whoever wants to know the legacy of the Prophet and his seal, then let him read the last ayat of Surah Al-An'am. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, أَلَا تُشْرِكُوا بِهِ شَيْءٍ وَبِالْوَالِدَيْنِ إِحْسَانًا وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا أَوْلَادَكُم مِّنْ أَمْلَاقٍ وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا فَوَاحِشَ وَلَا تَقْتُلُوا نَفْسَ الَّتِي حَرَمَ اللَّهُ وَلَا تَقْرَبُوا مَالَ الْيَتِيمِ وأوفوا كيل وميزان بالقسط وبعهد الله أوفوا وإذا كنتم فاعدلوا ولا تتبعوا سبلا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he says, first and foremost, and I cut it short, I abbreviated it just for the 10 commandments. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first he says, do not associate partners with me. Do not associate partners with Allah. Of course we know this. He says, and be kind to your parents, and do not abort your children, and do not come near illegal sexual intercourse, and do not take innocent lives. And stay away from the orphan of the wealth of the orphan. When you speak the truth. When you do business honestly. Fulfill the 5 pillars of Islam. And stay away from other manahij. Stay away from other paths. So this is justice. The Sharia came to establish justice. So when we have this conversation and we begin to define terms about what it means to be Muslim in America between what we call ihmal or exaggeration, negligence or exaggeration, we have to talk about fiqh al-aqaliyat, the fiqh of minorities, the fiqh of Muslims living as a minority in a Muslim majority country. This is very important because many times us Muslims living in the West, due to an incomplete understanding of Islam, we fall into ihmal, we fall into negligence. There are certain Western holidays and cultural norms that have nothing to do with aqeedah, have nothing to do with creed and theology. And these are celebrations that we can participate in. Thanksgiving, July 4th, 4th of July we mean. Some say birthdays. They have no direct correlation in aqeedah. But then there are Western cultural celebrations and norms that do have a correlation between aqeedah. Christmas, Halloween, Easter, and we have to tolerate them, mashallah ta'ala. There's a difference between tolerating and compromising. We should tolerate and we should be patient. But to participate in these specific norms and cultural holidays, it has grave effects on the aqeedah of a Muslim and on the aqaid of the Muslim family. Wallahi. There was a brother whom I know personally. He worked in an institution, very nice, big institution, where they had Christmas parties every year. So during these Christmas parties, they would invite him. So he said the first year they invited him, and they drink alcohol and beer and wine and champagne. So they invited him. He said, no, thank you. He didn't give an excuse. The second year, the supervisor told him, we have to come. He said, I can't make it. The Muslim brother said, I can't make it. So the third year, the supervisor told him, look, this is part of the job. You have to come, right? So we expect to see you. So the brother said, he told them, I won't be coming because it's against the fundamentals of my religion. I can't come. First of all, Christmas, with all due respect, is haram to the Muslims. We don't celebrate it. And I shouldn't be around this wine and this beer and this alcohol. He said, he said to me, Akhi, I can smell it when I walk by. Even when you walk by, they used to have it upstairs in the building. He said, when I walk by, I can smell it. So the supervisor said, we'll see about that. And he went to the director of human resources. And there was a big chaos and a big meeting. So the next morning, the director of human resources called him in the office and she apologized. She said, excuse him for his ignorance and not knowing that your religious obligation takes deference over any Christmas party that we have. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will protect your rights. Alhamdulillah. Likewise, I worked in the prison system, as we all know, as a chaplain for many years. One of the brothers whom I know dearly, who was also a chaplain, he refused to shake the hand of a female superintendent. Politely, he said that he told her, nice to meet you, ma'am, but I don't shake hands with women. So this woman, there was some people around. She became embarrassed. She cursed him out using bad words, and she said, well, I'm letting you know I don't accept that. And I'm going to do my best to see that you get fired from this job. This is a team here. We work together. You don't shake my hand as if I'm not good enough for you. She wouldn't do this thing like this. So again, she called human resources. And the brother said within a few days, he got a call from human resources apologizing, saying, listen, they don't know we hired you to be Muslim. We hired you to be Muslim. So this woman had no right to say what she said. And in fact, they told him she can be fired for that. She got transferred and demoted. She was a superintendent over an institution. She got transferred and demoted to a lieutenant. So wallahi, there's a difference between being tolerant and patient with customs that don't belong in Islam. We do not have to compromise. So tolerance is wajib, it's obligatory, but compromising is haram. And the problem begins when we try to be loyal to people and places rather than be loyal to principles. Principles never change. And being loyal to principles only matters when it's difficult to do so, right? It only matters when you're loyal to Islam, when it's difficult to do so. Otherwise, the Muslim, he will find himself Muslim in name only. And he goes from being a practitioner of Islam to just a philosopher. And on the other hand, you have what is called mubaligha, those who, they don't have any balance at all. And they want us to wear thobes to work every day, no matter where we work at. They think you should wear a thobe every day. If you're a doctor, if you're a taxi driver, if you're a trash man, wear a thobe every day, brother. And they think that women should wear niqab, the face veil, no matter what. For your license, driver's license, wear a face veil. And stay in the house all day. And they would like to ride camels on the highway if they could. So we look at this extreme position, and we say that this is not correct, of course. But for us, we say this is because they misunderstand what the Sunnah is. They misunderstand what it means to follow the Sahaba. In fact, they think that they're following the Sahaba. And we say this, that those Sahaba, those great men and women who surrounded the Prophet ﷺ, we say that to them, that they are our heroes, no doubt about it. However, we must be mindful that while we learn from them, we do not imitate them. We do not imitate them. This is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala intended, that we would imitate them. Rather, we say that imitation is blind copying, just copying. What we should do is emulate them. Emulate them. So we can't be afraid to think for ourselves, brothers and sisters. And this is what the talk really boils down to. As Muslims living in the West, we can't be afraid to think for ourselves. And this is the difference between imitation and emulation. Imitation is copying. Emulation is observational learning. So what's the difference? When you imitate, you focus on the action. How did the Prophet ﷺ sit? How did he eat? How did he do business? But if you answer that question how and you begin to copy, you might be just doing empty actions because you don't know the purpose behind those actions. You don't know why. So when you emulate, you go a step further and you begin to say, why did the Prophet ﷺ sit that way? Why did he fight the way he fought, or fight the battles that he fought? Why did he wear the clothing that he wore? So you see, when you imitate, you don't take into consideration the environment, the condition of the people, the mental state of the people. But emulate means to follow the principles, because the how may change, right? How we do something. It may change according to the condition or the environment. But the whys, the reason, the objective, the purpose will never change. So we can use, as American Muslims, we should be able to use different methodologies in order to reach the same objective. You know, Imam Sheikh Hafidhullah, I don't agree with everything he says. He's a Sheikh, I'm not. But we don't have to agree with everything people say. But I think that he gets a bad rep, because what he's trying to get us to do as American Muslims is step out of this cookie cutter image of fiqh that we have in place and to think for ourselves. And once again, we should be able to disagree with our scholars. But what he's trying to say is begin to think critically for yourself. You know, the Prophet ﷺ, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, you have a good example in Muhammad to follow. So if we follow him and we blindly imitate the way he ate, you wouldn't be able to get up and go to work if you ate the way he ate every day. A few dates and some stale bread. If you imitate and copy the way he ate, you eat some stale bread and 3 dates every day for the rest of your life, you end up weak, sick in the hospital, and be dead. So what does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say when he say, If you love me, then follow him. قُلْ إِن كُنْتُمْ تُحِبُّونَ اللَّهَ فَأَتَّبِعُونِي يُحْبِبْكُمُ اللَّهُ. What does he mean? It means emulate that principle. What was the principle behind him eating what he ate? The principle was what? Being one who was mu'tadilah, moderate. So he was moderate for his time, and you and I need to be moderate for our time. And it doesn't mean eating stale bread and dates. It means not being extravagant in what we do eat. So critical thinking is needed. If we lose our critical thinking skills, brothers and sisters, then we're doomed. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will not help us in areas where we can figure things out ourselves. So he says, we do not change the condition of a people until they change what is in themselves. The Mufassirin, they say this statement is for those critical thinkers who benefit from the brains that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave them. They don't challenge the goals, but they're always questioning the process. They're always questioning the process. This is what you and I have to do, question the process. So, we say, we all love the Sunnah. We all love the Sunnah. But we find that many brothers, they claim to love the Sunnah, but we say to them, brother, Akhi, understand the Sunnah before you claim you love it. Right? You have some brothers, if you offer them dessert, they say, no, I don't eat dessert because I'm on the Sunnah. The Prophet ﷺ didn't eat dessert. They stink because they don't believe in deodorant. Their teeth are yellow, their breath stinks because they don't use toothpaste. Wallahi, we know brothers like this. Because they misunderstand the Sunnah. They think they're drawing closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but really, they're just, this is from Jahil. So in the West, as Muslims in the West, we have to start to develop our own codified system. Our own codified system on how we live practical life every day. It has to be, we can't just try to imitate what goes on in these different countries. You know, I was listening to NPR recently. Very sad. There was a group of young Muslims from a so-called Muslim country. I won't mention the country so that I don't offend anyone. But they left Islam, they apostated. Because they said, we just feel as though, and it was being translated, they said, we feel as though Islam doesn't have enough to address the modern times. And this is because those extremists, those people who are exaggerating where they're at, killing women who try to get an education, you know, putting people in jail if they don't grow their beards. So this kind of extremism, we can't try to bring it here. I really believe that a child, a young teenager, as he starts to begin, he comes balagh, he starts to have puberty and understand his manhood, her womanhood. If we don't give them a perfect understanding of what Islam is, they begin to grab hold of these extreme ideas, right? And you see them in the masjid protesting the imam because he mentioned someone in the khutbah that he didn't like, or they protest this or they protest that, because they're confused. They want to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but they don't know how to be moderate. And so they look at the people with the thobes and the beards, and the people may be doing extreme things, and so they latch on to them, and they're wrong. But the only way we can clarify this is if you and I start to understand what the struggle is. So what's the struggle? Should the struggle be that all of us, we make our children memorize the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and yet the children don't know what they're reciting? Every masjid I go to, they should have a tajweed class and a qira'ah class, mashallah. But this is all I ever see focused on. The parents, they come drop the children off, and the parents feel as though, I'm just going to put my children in, I don't need to be purified. So the children come and recite Quran, and yet they don't know what they're saying. Is this the struggle that we should be in? Just blindly copying, imitating, reciting Quran, we don't know what it means? Is it a violent struggle? Should we be in a violent struggle? The answer to both of these questions is no. The struggle that we need in the West is to make known and clear the correct tawheed and aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The correct belief system of the Muslim. Why? So that the rest of the masses can have a clear understanding what we believe, so they can make a clear decision. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, invite to the way of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala upon clarity, upon surety, right? So how can you be sure, how can I be sure, if the only thing we ever do is make our children recite Quran. That's it. Wherever we go, Quran competitions, tajweed, nothing else. Just the beautification of voices. So you and I, we have to begin to implement principles that reflect our reality, where we're at, to beautify ourselves with Islam. So, as we evolve, brothers and sisters, our methodology, it must evolve. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, "من أحدث في أمرنا هذا ما ليس منه فهو رد." He said that whoever introduces something into this matter of ours will have it rejected. So when we say as we evolve, our methodology must evolve, listen close. We don't mean that the worship must change or evolve, or that the aqidah must evolve. La, it stays the same. But we have to question the process of our practical lives, our daily lives. This is why everyone thinks the Muslims are backwards, because we need to catch up. We can't be scared of fiqh. We send our children to college to think and become critical thinkers and to be leaders, but when it comes to Islam, we say be quiet and just recite. Be quiet and just recite. Recitation and the hufaz has its place, and it holds the highest rank in Islam. We know that. But we have to start to think for ourselves. So we can tell them to recite, but we need them to be leaders also. We need to give them tools to be leaders. You know, in usul al-fiqh, you know, in a hadith, a sahih hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, one of the companions was being harassed by a non-Muslim who said, laughing, he said, your prophet taught you to sit down when you urinate? This is hilarious. He taught you to sit when you urinate. And so this Sahaba, radiallahu anhu, he said, yes. He not only taught us to sit when we urinate, but during his lifetime, there wasn't a bird that flapped his wings in the sky or a leaf that fell from a tree, except that he gave us a ruling about it. So you and I, we have the equipment and tools. We just got to open up the toolbox. And usul al-fiqh is urf, custom, what people do. That's customary. There's istihsan. There is what we call legal preference, which has to do with the fiqh of transactions and how it changes from country to country. There's istishab, which means presumption of continuity. If something has been continuing, it's presumed that it will continue, and there's rulings that go with that. There's masalih and mursalah. There is consideration for public interest, and all of these tools that we should be utilizing here. Instead of we get a problem, and what do? We call 1-800-SHEIKH. Some sheikh overseas who doesn't know the condition that we're in. He can't possibly know the condition that we're in. And he gives a fatwa from 4,000 miles away about whether this sister or not should stay married to this brother, or whether or not this brother should pay this brother's debt off. From 4,000 miles away. Rather, when I was in Mecca studying with some of the ulama, one of them said to all of us students, the reason why we want you to study here is because we don't want to have to come there. It's not even permissible for us to give iftah from where we're at. The fatwa, the rulings, should come from those scholars who are local, right? They know the customs of the people. They know the taboos of the people. They know what the people like, what they don't like, right? So when the people push, they pull. When the people pull, the scholars push. But if we just say every time there's a problem, Sheikh so-and-so from this land, he said that we can't do that, akhi. Sheikh so-and-so, he never stepped his foot on American soil. And of course we hold the scholars and the ulama the highest rank, we know that. But this is the advice that they give us. Create your own scholars. So here's the challenge that we have today. We say, don't just consider your children, you know, that they're going to be engineers or dentists. We challenge you today that in the tradition of those classical scholars and in the tradition of the Sahaba, that yes, they should be engineers and dentists and doctors, but they should also be ulama. Right? The classical scholars of the past, they were salesmen, merchants, scientists, inventors, and they were ulama. So don't just settle for your child being an engineer, and that's what he do with his life. He's just an engineer for the rest of his life. قُلْ هَذِهِ سَبِيلُ أَدْعُو إِلَى اللَّهِ عَلَى بَصِيرَةٍ. Right? Say, I invite to the way of my Lord, upon sure guidance. So they should be engineers and doctors and dentists, as well as scholars of Quran and mufassirin and people who understand fiqh and hadith. We can't just settle for those scholars overseas. And this is why the system keeps being repetitive and repeating itself, because those people who want to attach themselves to deen, they have no one to listen to except the scholars overseas. So they take these foreign concepts from these foreign lands and try to address them here, and they become ghuraba in the bad way, strangers in the bad way. As Imam Maliki said, that you won't rectify this generation except by what rectified the first generation. And what rectified them is tazkiyat al-nafs, purification of the soul, understanding the issues of fiqh, understanding the problems of today. So you can't establish Islam in the land until you establish Islam within yourself. And you can't establish Islam within yourself until you establish institutions that teach Islam. And you can't establish institutions that teach it until you establish economic development. And you can't establish economic development until you establish peaceful relations with the non-Muslim. And you cannot establish peaceful relations with the non-Muslims until you recognize that fundamentally their foundation is one of ignorance and not wickedness. And you can't establish their condition until you first establish yours. Until you first establish what you're on. So we begin with no expectations from anyone else except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That we believe in Him and we believe in His promise. And this is where we start as Muslims in the West. Amantu billahi wa rasulihi. I believe in Allah and His Messenger. And then we build from there. And we don't look for any help from anyone else. But we say that, how could we be harsh to people? How can we say that the Sunnah is all being harsh and all anger and no smiles to the non-Muslim and being isolated and distant from your non-Muslim neighbors? How can we be unkind to these people when the doctors that we visit are Jewish and the police that we call to protect us are Christian? So we don't want to hear people saying, Sheikh so-and-so said that these people are stinking, najis, dirty, filthy people. But then when you get in some jams, you call 911. Do you say, I don't want any help from these stinking, najis, dirty, filthy people? No, you call them. And when you see those blue headlights, you say, alhamdulillah, they came. You know, one time my son, he had appendicitis. He was about 6 years old at the time. He was losing color. He had been in this pain for about 5 days, vomiting so much that he began to vomit his own bile. And he was waiting, and I began to panic, and we were making dua. My wife was crying. And then I remember when they put him to sleep, 2 Jewish doctors came out, and they put him to sleep in his little body, your little child, 7 years old, 6 years old, laid out, and they're wheeling him into the operating room. And they looked at me and smiled and said, don't worry, we'll take care of your son. And I understood, وَمَا يَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى اللَّهِ فَهُوَ حَسْبُهُ. And I understood that whoever puts his trust in Allah, then Allah will suffice. So we know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He puts the cure in sickness, and He puts the healing in medicine and aspirin and whatever else. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does it. But also, we must respect the methodology by which He brings about these miracles. And the methodology He used is other people who have other beliefs and from other countries. You know, Allah says, إِذَا سَأَلَكَ عِبَادِي أَنِّي فَإِنِّي قَرِيبٌ أُجِيبُ دَعْوَةَ الدَّاعِ إِذَا دَعَانِ. He said, oh Muhammad, tell them that when my slave calls upon me, tell them that I answer the call of all of those who call on me. So the ulama say sometime Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He answered the call when you call on Him through a non-Muslim to teach you about humility. So you make dua to Allah, oh Allah, I need a job. And that non-Muslim company calls you. Do you say, no, I only want to work for the Muslims? Click. No, you accept that. So we have to have hawna. As Allah says in Surah Rahman, we have to have hawna, humility, along with integrity and honor. And we have to define terms on ourselves, on our own terms, as Muslims living in the West, as American Muslims. If not, our children are in danger of going astray, being negligent, getting girlfriends and boyfriends, or going on the other end, or becoming extremists, and thinking it's okay to bomb people and hurt people, because we're not clarifying it for them. So brothers and sisters, wallahi, we have to do more than just memorize Quran. We have to memorize the Quran. And what good is that if the parents are not implementing Quran in the households? I've worked in many Islamic schools, and we teach them all day. We teach the children, and they go home for their parents to just undo what we taught them. So inshallah ta'ala, we have to do better. And we have to be people who are more mu'tadila, balanced, moderate. This is the way of the Sunnah. This is the way of Sharia. And this is the way of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We have to do this while not compromising the principles of our deen, remaining loyal to those principles, but at the same time, tolerating others and understanding what's permissible for us to participate in and what we should withhold from. And if we do this, inshallah ta'ala, and we keep the aqidah pure, and we remember Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way we should remember Him, then this ummah will once again be victorious and successful. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to keep us away from what earns His wrath. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Ameen. Jazakumullahu khairan. So inshallah ta'ala, we would like to invite our Sheikh Kamala to do some recitation from Surah Al-Yasin, I believe. Inshallah ta'ala, after which we'll make a brief dua for Sheikh Ahmed rahimahullah.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ياسين والقرآن الحكيم إنك لمن المرسلين على صراط مستقيم. تنزيل العزيز الرحيم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم لتنذر قوما ما أنذر آباؤهم فهم غافلون. لقد حق القول على أكثرهم فهم لا يؤمنون. إنا جعلنا في أعناقهم أغلالا فهي إلى الأذقان فهم مقمحون. وجعلنا من بين أيديهم سدا ومن خلفهم سدا فأغشيناهم فهم لا يبصرون وسواء عليهم أأنذرتهم أم لم تنذرهم لا يؤمنون إنما تنذر من اتبع الذكر وخشي الرحمن بالغيب فبشره بمغفرة وأجر كريم إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين إنا نحن نحيي الموتى ونكتب ما قدموا وآثارهم وكل شيء أحصيناه في إمام مبين واضرب لهم مثلا أصحاب القرية إذ جاءها المرسلون إذ أرسلنا إليهم اثنين فكذبوهما فعززنا بثالث فقالوا إنا إليكم مرسلون قالوا ما أنتم إلا بشر مثلنا وما أنزل الرحمن من شيء إن أنتم إلا تكذبون قالوا ربنا يعلم إنا إليكم لمرسلون وما قالوا طائركم معكم أئن ذكرتم بل أنتم قوم مسرفون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وجاء من أقصى المدينة رجل يسعى قال يا قوم اتبعوا المرسلين اتبعوا من لا يسألكم أجرا وهم مهتدون. وما لي لا أعبد الذي فطرني وإليه ترجعون. أأتخذ من دونه آلهة إن يردني الرحمن بضر لا تغن عني شفاعتهم شيئا ولا ينقذون. إني إذا لفي ضلال مبين. إني آمنت بربكم فاسمعون. قيل ادخل الجنة قال يا ليت قومي يعلمون بما غفر لي ربي وجعلني من المكرمين. وما أنزلنا على قومه من بعده من جند من السماء وما كنا منزلين. إن كانت إلا صيحة واحدة فإذا هم خامدون يا حسرة على العباد ما يأتيهم من رسول إلا كانوا به يستهزئون ألم يروا كم أهلكنا قبلهم من القرون أنهم إليهم لا يرجعون وإن كل لما جميع لدينا محضرون وآية لهم الأرض الميتة أحييناها وأخرجنا منها حبا فمنه يأكلون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون وجعلنا فيها جنات من نخيل وأعناب وفجرنا فيها من العيون ليأكلوا من ثمره وما عملته أيديهم أفلا يشكرون سبحان الذي خلق الأزواج كلها مما تنبت الأرض ومن أنفسهم ومما لا يعلمون وآية لهم الليل نسلخ منه النهار فإذا هم مظلمون والشمس تجري لمستقر لها ذلك والقمر قدرناه منازل حتى عاد كالعرجون القديم لا الشمس ينبغي لها أن تدرك القمر ولا الليل سابق النهار وكل في فلك يسبحون صدق الله العظيم.
Bismillah. Inshallah ta'ala. Barakallahu feekum, Sheikh, for that beautiful recitation. MashaAllah. So we're going to, inshallah ta'ala, just make a very brief dua for our brother Abdul Majid Ahmed, who passed away. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala have mercy on him. And so, we begin. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان. ربنا هب لنا من أزواجنا وذريتنا قرة أعين واجعلنا للمتقين إماما. اللهم اغفر ولوالدي ولأستاذي ولجميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات ومسلمين ومسلمات برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. اللهم اغفر لأبو عبد المجيد أحمد وارفع درجته في المهديين واخلفه في عقبه في الغابرين واغفر لنا وله يا رب العالمين وافسح له في قبره ونور له فيه. Oh Allah, we ask you to have mercy on our brother Ahmed. Forgive him. Make him amongst the guided ones, Allah. Raise his rank, Allah. O Lord of the two worlds, we ask you to replace him with what's grieving us, Allah. Forgive us our shortcomings and forgive him, Allah. And open his grave and make it wide and spacious and full of light. Ameen. Ameen. Jazakumullah khair, brothers and sisters. Alhamdulillah. We know that death is inevitable. It is something that we will all face. And these times should make us reflect not only on our loved ones, but also on our endings. As the ulama say, when you're at the qabr, when you're at the grave, you should cry 50% for the person being lowered into the ground and also 50% for yourself. Because this is an ending that is coming to all of us. And it is a minor resurrection. It is a minor day of judgment for us. Because our judgment will begin in the grave of Munkar and Nakir. So we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to expand the grave of our brother Ahmed and to fill it with light and to wash away his sins and to accept his good deeds and overlook his faults and increase his good deeds. Ameen. Sure.
Assalamu alaikum. If anybody has any questions.
Or even statements. Any statements that brothers want to make about our talk or about the remembrance of death. We encourage it, we remind it. This is why we came to the masjid, to the house of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to remember him. And we shouldn't be shy to mention his name as well as mention some of the issues revolving around Islam, inshallah ta'ala. So if anyone has any statements they would like to make, feel free.
Can you talk a little bit further about the Prophet's birthday? Because I feel like this is one area that Muslims are divided upon.
His what?
Prophet's birthday.
The Prophet's birthday, celebrating the Prophet's birthday. MashaAllah ta'ala. This is the ikhtilaf, this is the issue of fiqh. It's not an issue that I'm well versed on, and I can't give a fatwa on it. I'm not a sheikh. All I know is that some people celebrate it and they have evidence as to why they celebrate it. And some people don't celebrate it and they have evidence. And we say that we should not separate along these lines on whether people celebrate the Prophet's birthday or not. Because where there's no unity, where there lacks unity, nothing else can be established. So this is not an issue that I would like to get into the difference of opinion. I don't know much about it. I know that some people celebrate it and some don't. And they each have evidence. Wallahu a'lam. Yeah. Wa alaikum salam.
Thank you very much for the lecture. It was inspirational. You mentioned a point that was very good for parents when we are teaching our kids. I mean, this is because we for parents or teachers, or especially in Islamic schools. But it is for parents, especially. I would highly ask you if you have like a format. You know, you mentioned the idea of reciting the Quran without understanding what it is, kids just repeating, and I totally agree with you. So I was just thinking, if you have like a quick format, how should parents approach, like when we sit down with our kids to do like a mini halaqah, what would be like an example of a nice format to teach them the understanding while repeating the Quran?
MashaAllah, the brother's asking about some of the tartib in teaching the children about things that have to do with Islam along with Quran, meaning that we just want to teach them more than just reciting Quran when they don't understand the meanings. I first want to clarify, the recitation of Quran is one of the most praiseworthy things that the Muslims can do. Right? And it's one of the most noteworthy things that we can teach our children. We have to pass the Quran down, right? This is how it's reached us, from chest to chest, from people reciting it. But what we don't want to become is a nation of those whom the Prophet ﷺ said in Riyadh al-Salihin, the book of Fitan. He said towards the end of time there will be a people who say La ilaha illallah, and the people will say, what does that mean? And they say, I don't know, but I heard my parents saying it. I don't know what it means. So first and foremost, I just want to clarify that the Quran is noteworthy, and it's the highest rank, and we should teach our children to recite it correctly with the correct makharij and the correct tajweed. But it shouldn't end there. There are many online resources, right? So there are many simple books, very simple books about aqeedah and about fiqh. But I think it first starts with the parents. I think that what I've seen, and Allah knows best, is that many times parents think that their salvation lies in putting the children through Islamic tarbiyah rather, while they themselves don't have to practice anything beyond praying 5 times a day. So first and foremost, my brother, there has to be a household in Islam, right? So there are people who, I know their children are studying to be Hafiz of Quran, and yet when you go into their home, they have pictures of basketball players, LeBron James, and all these other people all on the walls. You have music playing. So first I think that the parents have to check themselves and be mindful that they have to fear Allah just as much or more so than the children. And the people who've reached the age of bulugh, us, we have more of an obligation to recite the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than our 7 and 8-year-old children. So first I think that, to go back to the statement that the brother made, what are some of a light program that you can have? Well, I would say you can attach a reward system to akhlaq, to good behavior, right? So you might be able to find online, we do in our household, we create like a tree of deeds, right? So the child, we have it ranked by that, maybe, didn't say anything mean to the sibling, put away the dishes, obeyed this, or made all the salat on time. And when you start to set this chart up, it's something that the children can see. And the more that they get apples on this tree under the different columns, then we get a reward. Whoever at the end of the week has the most apples, they get a reward. So it's something that they can see visually, this tree of deeds. And they know that if I make all my 5 salat every day on time, I'm going to get another apple. I'm going to get it. And once they get 5 or so apples at the end of the week, you give them a small treat. We have to stop enforcing Islam in terms of being punishment, right? So a lot of times when our children are punished, we get mad at them and we say, now you're going to go home and read a whole juz. So in this way we use Quran as punishment. So we have to make Islam lovable. We have to make the children love it. And I think that first creating an insulated household, and it begins, I hate to say it, well I do love to say it actually, the first place that a man demonstrates leadership is in his household. And every country is responsible and is held accountable by first the deeds of the king. So we say the first people who should be held responsible are the fathers, the husbands. We have to tighten ourselves up, tighten up our deen, and bring it home. And do these simple things like play games with the children, Islamic games. There are many resources online where they have games and have board games you can buy, digital games, card games you can buy, and these type of things, as opposed to just, and there's many things that they can learn. You know, I teach Islamic schools, and many times the children don't know that you can't have images on the wall. They don't know that they're not supposed to listen to music. They don't know these fundamental things because of the parents. So we say that, you know, we're all trying, and we've all migrated back to Islam, and we had some success in that. We've all had some success because we wouldn't be here. So this is not a bashing session. Rather, every time we gather in the masjid, it should remind us to increase our iman and do better and do more. So inshallah ta'ala, it starts with us. And then inshallah ta'ala, the creativity comes with making Islam fun and making it something that the children, inshallah ta'ala, will enjoy. And Allah knows best. Everybody's so shy. We have so many brothers in mashallah ta'ala.
I have a question actually.
Yes.
It's related to what the brother actually asked. Sometimes children ask questions that are very hard for parents to answer about religion. Where is God? Where is Allah? Because they're used to seeing things visually. Mm-hmm. In those circumstances where the parents cannot explain them with those tough questions. And children are in general very honest. Mm-hmm. And you have to be honest with them. If you're fooling them, they'll know it. Mm-hmm. How do you address that type of situation?
MashaAllah, so the brother's saying that sometimes the children have questions that can be complicated and very complex to answer. Where is Allah? Who is Allah? How come I can't see Him? So how do we address these questions with children? Sheikh Uthaymeen, he gave a beautiful talk, rahimahullah, a beautiful talk about how to train the children in Aqidah when they're young, and also in certain manners that we have in the house and outside of the house. He said, so first at the age of 2 or 3 or so, you start to give them their treats and their food, and if they take it with the left hand, you say, right hand, and we all know this. But it increases to, where is Allah? This doesn't, you don't have to say, well, there's a controversial issue on whether Allah is everywhere or whether He's above His throne. No, you just say up, right, up. So you point as the child's 2 and 3, and you may say Allah, Allah, pointing up. So you're teaching them very fundamental principles of deen. And the Sahaba, one of the ulama, they said that the Sahaba's knowledge wasn't vast, but it was deep and simple. So for us, we also have to learn these things, these principles, and the more we learn, the more we can teach it in a way that's more palatable to young people. But if we don't know the answer, and you go to a sheikh or an imam, he's going to give you this long answer. And then how do you take that back to your child? But the more that you internalize it, the more you'll be able to regurgitate it in a very easy way. Where is Allah? He's up. Who is Allah? Allah created the trees, the clouds, you know, you point to things, the sun, the moon, the birds, right? So these kind of basic fundamental things, and inshallah ta'ala, as the child grows, you can get into more details, and Allah knows best. Now it's Isha time, we call it down. Barakallahu feek. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.